And that, young cadets, concludes our study of the Xeraxian war beasts. Now, we move on to something far more terrifying. Professor Krax Vondaris paused for dramatic effect, his 4 arms simultaneously adjusting the holocaster controls while straightening his military decorations. The amphitheater fell silent. 200 senior cadets of the Galactic Defense Academy leaned forward, their various appendages twitching with anticipation. Even the crystalline quartz mines stopped their usual harmonic humming. Let me tell you about the Centauri trading station incident. It was supposed to be a routine first contact meeting. Professor Vondaris brought up new footage showing a space station's security feed. There they were, Ambassador Marcus Chen and his team of 5, meeting with the Galactic Council's Trade Federation. Notice how they're smiling. Humans do that to show they're not hostile, though personally I find the display of teeth unsettling. Several cadets nodded in agreement. The footage showed the human delegation chatting amicably with various alien representatives around a large conference table. Now watch carefully. This is where everything changes. Vondaris slowed the playback. The security feed suddenly filled with plasma fire as 15 Cranaxian pirates stormed the conference room. The aliens around the table immediately dove for cover, following standard survival protocols. But the humans? They did something else entirely. Observe Ambassador Chen's reaction. Vondaris froze the frame. See that expression? Humans call it a smirk. It's the last thing those pirates ever saw. The footage resumed. Ambassador Chen grabbed the solid titanium conference table, which weighed roughly 300 kilos, and flipped it sideways as a shield. A move that should have been physically impossible for a being his size. What you're witnessing is the effect of human adrenaline, Vondaris explained. Their bodies can temporarily ignore their own physical limitations. They call it hysterical strength. Quite frankly, it's horrifying. The security feed showed what happened next. The female human, Communications Officer Sarah Rodriguez, grabbed a decorative pole from the wall and proceeded to use it with devastating efficiency. Notice her form, Vondaris pointed. Humans call this staff. Fighting, they turned ceremonial objects into weapons before most species discovered tool use. The youngest human, Technical Advisor James Parker, had somehow reached the environmental controls. Within seconds, he'd reprogrammed the gravity settings, creating zones of 0G and crushing 5G that the humans navigated with disturbing ease. They trained for this, Vondaris explained, his voice filled with disbelief. They practice fighting in every possible condition. For fun. They call it sports. The footage showed Security Chief Alexandra Nova, a deceptively small human female, systematically disarming and disabling pirates twice her size. Her movements were precise, almost beautiful in their brutality. The pirates made 3 critical mistakes, Vondaris continued. First, they assumed numerical superiority meant tactical advantage. Second, they thought removing weapons from the humans would make them defenseless. And third, most fatal of all, they threatened the station's civilian population. The feed showed the remaining 2 humans, cultural attaché Michael Torres and medical officer Rachel Blackwood, coordinating an evacuation while simultaneously using chairs, table legs, and even their own formal wear as improvised weapons. In exactly 3 minutes and 42 seconds, 5 humans with no weapons subdued 15 armed pirates, prevented a station-wide catastrophe, and saved 27 civilian lives. Vondaris paused the footage. The Trade Federation representatives were still hiding under their desks. Cadet Nexus 7 raised a claw. But Professor, surely this was a specialized combat team disguised as diplomats. Vondaris let out a harsh laugh. That's the best part. They weren't. Ambassador Chen was a career diplomat who practiced something called Aikido as a hobby. Officer Rodriguez was a linguistics expert who enjoyed pole dancing. Apparently some form of human recreational activity. Parker was a computer scientist who rock climbed for fun. Chief Nova had basic military training, yes. But her main combat experience came from something called competitive gymnastics, and Dr. Blackwood, she was simply a medical professional who played something called rugby on weekends. The professor's bioluminescent patches pulsed with excitement. Don't you see? These weren't their warriors. These were their bureaucrats, their pencil pushers, their ordinary citizens. He let that sink in before delivering the coup de grace. And here's the truly terrifying part. After subduing the pirates, treating the wounded, and helping repair the station, the humans submitted a formal apology to the Trade Federation. They were sorry for, and I quote, causing a scene they were worried they'd made a bad first impression. The amphitheater was dead silent. That, cadets, was the day the Galactic Council realized that every human, every single one, is potentially a walking weapon. They don't even have to try. They just are. Computer, display species file THX 1138. The massive screen behind him flickered to life, showing a bipedal creature with pitifully minimal natural defenses. No claws, no armor, not even a proper set of fangs. Several cadets laughed. Cadet Nexus 7, a proud Martillion with foot-long retractable claws, spoke up. "Professor, there must be some mistake. That's just a squishy bipedal. Where are its natural weapons?" Professor Vandaris clicked his mandibles, a gesture that immediately silenced the room. His bioluminescent patches pulsed with a deep crimson, the color of deadly seriousness. That, dear cadets, is precisely why they're so dangerous. This, he gestured with his upper right arm, is a human. The word hung in the air like a toxic gas cloud. Even the most battle-hardened veterans among the teaching staff, watching from their observation pods, shifted uncomfortably. "But they look so fragile," whispered Cadet Luna Rex, her scales reflecting the ambient light. "Ah yes," Vandaris's voice took on an almost manic tone. "That's what the Drachnid Empire thought too. Would anyone care to tell me where the mighty Drachnid Empire is now?" Silence. Exactly. Gone. Reduced to a cautionary footnote in our history texts. And do you know what's even more terrifying? The humans didn't even consider it a major conflict. They classified it as a, quote, minor border skirmish. Vandaris began pacing, his footsteps echoing through the suddenly very attentive hall. "Today's lecture will be different from any other you've received. We're not discussing tactical advantages or analyzing battle formations. No, today we're studying why the Galactic Council has classified humanity as the only species with a XXX danger rating." He stopped pacing and faced his students, all four eyes narrowing. "By the end of this session, you'll understand why every spacefaring civilization has one standing order regarding humans: do not provoke them." A holographic display sprang to life, showing various human historical footage. These creatures, Vandaris continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, evolved on a death world so hostile that their scientists named their evolutionary process survival of the fittest, where most species evolved to fill a niche. Humans evolved to dominate every single one. The professor's bioluminescence shifted to a deep purple, the color of fascinated horror. But that's not even the scariest part. The scariest part is, they're nice about it. Until they're not. Professor Vandaris switched the display to a series of human historical records. After the Centauri incident, the Council authorized the first comprehensive study of human military history. What we discovered kept our top analysts awake for months. The screen displayed various human combat scenarios through the ages. Look at their progression. Most species develop one superior method of warfare and stick to it. The Xeraxians' perfect plasma weapons. The Martillians master orbital bombardment. Humans. He shook his head in disbelief. Humans master everything. The footage showed human warriors through time, ancient armies with spears, horseback fighters with bows, soldiers with projectile weapons, modern troops with energy rifles. They never abandoned any combat form. They just kept adding new ones. A human warrior today can use a plasma rifle, a chemical projectile weapon, a bow and arrow, or their bare hands, all with equal proficiency. Cadet Luna Rex raised her tail. "But Professor, surely they're physical limitations." "Physical limitations," Vandaris barked out a laugh. "Let me tell you about human physical limitations. Computer, display the mountain warfare footage." The screen showed humans climbing sheer cliff faces in something called the Himalayas. These humans are fighting at altitudes where most species would suffocate, in temperatures that would freeze a Martillion solid, and they're doing it without powered armor. He switched to desert combat footage. Here they are again, fighting in temperatures that would cook a Xeraxian's brain. Next, underwater operations. Arctic warfare, zero-gravity combat. There is no environment humans haven't adapted to fight in. The professor's color shifted to deep blue, the shade of academic fascination. But their most terrifying trait? Pain tolerance. Computer, display the Bennett incident. The screen showed a human female soldier trapped under debris during a space station attack. Lieutenant Amanda Bennett, both legs crushed by a support beam. Third-degree plasma burns across 40% of her body. By all medical logic, she should have been in shock, completely incapacitated. The footage continued. Instead, she dragged herself 2 kilometers through maintenance tunnels, manually overrode 3 security doors, reached the reactor core, and prevented a meltdown that would have killed everyone on the station. When asked later how she managed it, she said, and I quote, "The job wasn't finished." Vondaris gestured to a different display. We studied their pain response after that. Humans don't just tolerate pain, they can ignore it completely if properly motivated. They have something called an endorphin response that actually makes them stronger when injured. It's like their bodies have a built-in combat stimulant. He pulled up comparison charts. See these readings. When faced with what they consider a righteous cause, humans can continue fighting with injuries that would incapacitate any other known species. Broken bones? They wrap them and keep going. Severe blood loss. They donate blood to each other in the middle of battle and get back to fighting. The professor's voice dropped to a whisper. We found records of a human who swam through freezing water, climbed a cliff, fought through enemy lines, and defended a position for 3 days straight, all with a ruptured appendix. They gave him something called a Medal of Honor. They celebrate this behavior. They encourage it. He switched off the displays, letting darkness fall over the amphitheater. But here's what truly terrifies our military analysts. Everything I've shown you, every seemingly impossible feat of endurance, these were all performed by humans fighting under their self-imposed restrictions, their rules of engagement, their Geneva Convention. The light slowly came back up, revealing Vondaris's bioluminescence had shifted to stark white, the color of primal fear. Which leads us to our next topic, cadets. What happens when humans decide the rules no longer apply? The Council's Science Division conducted extensive studies on human biology, with some rather unsettling results. Professor Vondaris pulled up a holographic human anatomical model. First, let's address their regenerative capabilities. The model highlighted various human injuries. Most species, when damaged, either die or require extensive medical intervention. Humans, they just keep healing. Break their bones, they grow back stronger. Cut their skin, it repairs itself. Remove one of their organs, the others adapt to compensate. They're like living repair droids. He switched to a neural scan. But their nervous system, that's where things get truly fascinating. Humans have something called an adrenaline response. Computer, show test subject 247. The screen displayed footage of a human male in a controlled testing environment. This is Thomas Carter, a human cargo pilot who volunteered for our studies. Notice his baseline readings completely average. Now watch what happens when we simulate a threat. The footage showed Carter suddenly lifting a 400-kilo weight off a trapped test dummy. His muscle strength tripled, his reaction time doubled, his pain receptors practically shut down, all because his body released a simple chemical cocktail. Several cadets chittered nervously. Oh, but it gets better, Vondaris continued, his voice rising with excitement. We discovered humans can trigger this response at will. They have mental techniques, they call it getting psyched up to activate their combat chemistry. They use it in something called competitive sports. He brought up more test results. Here's what happened when we tested their endurance limits. The human test subjects ran until exhaustion in high gravity conditions. Then they kept running. We increased the gravity. They kept running. We added weights. They kept running. Vondaris clicked his mandibles in frustration. We never actually found their true limits. They always outlasted our testing equipment. The humans called it a good workout and asked when they could try again. The screen switched to thermal imaging. Then there's their temperature adaptation. Humans can survive and function in environmental conditions ranging from 233 to 319 Kelvin. Their bodies automatically regulate their temperature through something called sweating, which, by the way, makes them excellent trackers since they can literally taste chemicals in the air. He pulled up a comparison chart, Look at these sleep deprivation tests. Most species shut down after a few days without rest. Humans? They can stay combat effective for up to 5 days with no sleep. Sure, they start hallucinating, but here's the scary part: they remain functional. We had one test subject who, despite being awake for 4 days straight, still managed to solve complex mathematical equations and win something called a poker game against our top strategic AI. The professor switched to biochemical readings. And this is what happens when you threaten their young. The readings went off the charts. Their strength doubles again. Pain resistance quadruples. Decision-making becomes hyperactive. They enter what they call mom strength or dad mode. We still don't fully understand the mechanism. Cadet Nexus 7 raised his claw again. Surely they must have some biological limitations. Vondarus's bioluminescence flickered rapidly. You would think so. We tested their reaction to various toxins. Turns out humans routinely consume chemicals that would kill most species, just for pleasure. They call it spicy food and alcohol. Some of them deliberately expose themselves to radiation for a cosmetic effect they call tanning. He brought up one final set of data. But here's the most disturbing discovery. Remember the adrenaline response I mentioned? Well, we found that when humans face what they perceive as overwhelming odds, when they're pushed beyond their normal limits, they experience something called hysterical strength. Their bodies basically override all safety protocols. The screen showed security footage from various incidents. A human lifting a ground vehicle to save a trapped child. Another swimming through freezing waters for 6 hours to get help. A third fighting off predators for hours with multiple fractures to protect their companions. Vondarus's color shifted to a deep violet. We had to create an entirely new classification system for their capabilities because they kept breaking our existing models. They're not just persistent or strong or adaptable. They're all of these things all the time, and they can become even more so if they need to be. He closed the holographic displays. And remember, cadets, everything I've shown you today, these were all just baseline humans. We've never actually seen what their military elites are truly capable of. And quite frankly, I hope we never do. Professor Vondarus's bioluminescence pulsed with a sickly green as he brought up the next display. Now we come to the discovery that caused 3 members of the Galactic Council to resign their positions and retreat to meditation colonies. The screen displayed an ancient Earth document. This, cadets, is what humans call the Geneva Convention. When we first discovered it, our analysts thought it was a weapons development guide. It's not. It's a list of restrictions. Rules that humans imposed on themselves to limit the devastation of their wars. A nervous murmur spread through the amphitheater. Yes, you heard correctly. Everything we've observed, every terrifying display of human combat capability, has been them fighting with restraint. Vondarus pulled up specific articles of the convention. They prohibited themselves from using chemical weapons, not because they couldn't make them, but because they considered them too cruel. They banned biological warfare, not because it was ineffective, but because they found it distasteful. He switched to historical footage. This is Commander Jack Reynolds during the Proxima Centauri conflict. His unit was pinned down by Drachnid forces. The Drachnids had deployed nerve gas, breaking every protocol of civilized warfare. Reynolds had access to Earth's entire chemical weapons arsenal. He could have ended the battle in minutes. The footage showed the commander's forces using conventional weapons instead, but he didn't, because even when faced with extinction, humans try to fight with honor. Try to grasp the implications of that, cadets. Even their most hardened warriors voluntarily restrict their combat options. Vondarus brought up another document. This is the banned weapons list from their pre-space era. It reads like a technological terror catalog. Neutron bombs that kill organisms but leave infrastructure intact. Chemical agents that could strip entire armies of their cognitive functions. Biological weapons that could rewrite genetic codes. Code. His voice dropped to a whisper. They developed these weapons, proved they worked, then locked them away. Not because they had to, but because they chose to. Because humans believe there should be rules even in warfare. The professor started pacing again. But here's what keeps our military strategists awake at night. What happens if humanity decides the rules no longer apply? What happens if we push them too far? He brought up footage from Earth's history. we found records of something they called World War II, a conflict so vast it engulfed their entire planet. When humans felt their civilization was truly threatened, they created something called the Manhattan Project. The screen showed a mushroom cloud. This was them breaking their own rules, just once. Just to end a war they felt had gone too far. The power they unleashed reshaped their understanding of warfare forever. Vandaris's color shifted to absolute black, the deepest sign of dread. And that was just their early atomic weapons. Imagine what they're capable of now. Imagine what weapons they've developed and chosen not to use. Imagine what happens if humanity ever decides that their Geneva Convention no longer serves its purpose. He brought up the final display a simple equation. Our best xenopsychologists estimate that humans operate at roughly 15% of their total combat capability during peacetime. In standard warfare, they might reach 35%. At their most desperate, we've seen them push to maybe 50%. No one, not even the humans themselves, knows what they're truly capable of at 100%. The professor closed all displays, letting darkness fall over the amphitheater. This is why the Council maintains its primary directive regarding humanity: never push them past their self-imposed limits. Never make them feel that they have no choice. Never, ever make them abandon their rules. His bioluminescence gave one final pulse. Because the only thing more terrifying than human warfare is human warfare without restrictions. The Galactic Council's response to these findings was unprecedented, Vandaris announced, bringing up footage of an emergency session. For the first time in its 40,000-year history, the Council voted unanimously on a military directive. The screen showed hundreds of alien representatives, each species different from the last, all raising their appendages in agreement. The Collective Defense Protocol 47B, better known as the Don't Poke the Humans Directive. Several cadets laughed nervously at the name. You laugh, but this protocol fundamentally changed galactic military doctrine. Vandaris highlighted key points from the document. First, humanity was classified as a protected species not for their safety, but for ours. Any aggressive action against human settlements became punishable by immediate military intervention from all Council races. He switched to training footage. Every military force in known space had to implement new first contact protocols. Look at these commands if you encounter humans. Maintain non-threatening postures if humans appear agitated. Slowly back away if humans display their teeth in a smile. Remain calm. They consider this friendly. The professor brought up another document. The Council even created a new position: human interaction specialist. These brave individuals study human behavior patterns and advise military commanders on avoiding accidental provocations. Security footage appeared on screen. This is Commander Zax Blackstar of the Rigelian Defense Force. He encountered a human colony ship in disputed space. Previous doctrine would have demanded he assert territorial rights. The footage showed the commander instead opening communications, offering assistance, and even providing an escort to the nearest safe port. He received the Council's highest commendation for this response. In his citation, it reads, Commander Blackstar correctly identified that the cost of victory against even a single human colony ship would exceed any possible territorial gains. Vandaris switched to diplomatic records. The Council then took an extraordinary step. They gave humanity a seat on the Strategic Defense Committee not because we needed their military input, but because it was safer to have them planning with us than potentially planning against US. He highlighted trade agreements. Look at these concessions. Free passage through all Council space, priority docking rights, exclusive mining permits. One Council member called it the Please Stay Happy Protocol. The screen showed the final vote tallies. The motion to classify humanity as a protected species passed with 0 opposition. The Drachnid representative, whose species had actually fought humans, spoke for 6 hours about the importance of keeping humanity peaceful. Vandaris's bioluminescence shifted to a cautionary yellow. But the most significant response? The Council established the Human Monitoring Task Force. Their sole job is to watch human entertainment media. Confused murmurs filled the room. Yes, entertainment. Because humans constantly imagine new ways to fight in something called action movies, the task force watches these movies to identify and prepare countermeasures for combat techniques humans haven't even tried yet. He brought up one final document. And this is the classified addendum to the protection protocol. It contains just one line: under no circumstances should humanity be given reason to develop their full military potential. The professor's color returned to normal. The council's response might seem extreme, but consider this. We're not protecting humanity from the galaxy. We're protecting the galaxy from what humanity might become if we force them to abandon their self-imposed restrictions. Professor Vondaris straightened all four sleeves of his formal uniform. And so, graduating class, as you prepare to receive your commissions tomorrow, remember this lesson well. The most dangerous beings in the galaxy aren't the ones who look frightening. They're the ones who look harmless until they're not. He gestured to the final display, a simple image of a human child playing with a puzzle cube. They're the species that solves deadly physics equations for fun, that turns everything into a competition, that sees every limitation as a personal challenge. The lights in the amphitheater began to brighten for the first time in hours. Your certificates will bear the Council's highest clearance regarding human interaction protocols. Remember your training. Stay professional, stay courteous, and most importantly, stay non-threatening. Vondaris's bioluminescence shifted to ceremonial gold. Class dismiss. He stopped mid-word, his four eyes widening as the back doors of the amphitheater opened. Admiral Blake Morrison of the Human Diplomatic Corps walked in, accompanied by Captain Emily Chang and Lieutenant Commander Marcus Rivera. They were smiling, displaying their teeth in that distinctly human way. Magnificent lecture, Professor Vondaris. Admiral Morrison called out. Though you might want to update your data about our endurance limits. Those tests you mentioned, we were taking it easy because we didn't want to break your equipment. The cadets froze, suddenly realizing they'd been sharing classroom space with the very beings they'd spent hours learning to fear. Captain Chang grinned even wider. Also, that poker game you mentioned, your strategic AI didn't lose because Dr. Stevens was sleep-deprived. He lost because humans invented something called bluffing. Lieutenant Commander Rivera nodded. And those achievement tests you studied? Those were from our civilian training programs. The three humans reached the podium, still smiling, and Admiral Morrison extended his hand to the professor. But overall, excellent presentation. Though you might want to mention that humans really prefer making friends to fighting. It's just, well, we like to be prepared. The last thing the graduating class saw before filing out was Professor Vondaris's bioluminescence cycling through every known color of terror, while the humans chatted amiably about something called space tennis and whether the cafeteria served decent coffee. No one slept well that night,